So we've been talking about nouns and pronouns and the different categories for each of them. But when we're using nouns and pronouns in a sentence, we like to know something about them. Right? We want to be able to describe them, give information about those nouns and pronouns so we understand them better. So adjectives. Adjectives modify nouns and pronouns. And just in case that word modify is unfamiliar to you, let's take a moment to think about what that means. So to modify. To modify means to describe or to make the meaning of a word more specific. So, an adjective. An adjective is a modifier that tells us what kind, which one, how many, how much. So what kind? Spilled ink, English tea, howling winds. Let's take a look at some of the adjectives in this list. Well, we have 3 different sets here. Spilled ink. Right. It's telling us what we need to know about the ink. Right? It's spilled. Who wants spilled ink? What a mess. English tea and howling winds. Now, as we go through these different adjectives, I'm going to draw your attention to a few things. First, with this word English. English tea. Now, English in a different sentence could be a proper noun. Right? So in a different sentence, English could be a proper noun. But here, it's not working as a noun. Right? It's working as an adjective that describes what kind of tea we have. Okay, so when we're thinking about parts of speech, right, we want to think about, well, what is that word doing in the sentence? Right? You have to ask yourself that question. Because in one sentence, that word might be a noun, and in another, it could be an adjective. Later, we're going to talk about verbs. And spilled is a good example of a word that, in a different sentence, might be a verb. Right? He spilled the milk. Right? There, I used it as a verb. Right? Or the spilled milk dried on the table. In that case, spilled, I used it as an adjective. Okay? So you have to think about the role of that word in a sentence. And the same is true with these next examples for which one? This park, these papers, that house. And I'm sure you're saying, well, wait a minute. I thought earlier you said those were demonstrative pronouns, because indeed they are. All 3 of them. This, these, that. Those are demonstrative pronouns. But in a sentence, okay, here we're using them as adjectives that describe park, papers, and house. Okay? And remember, this that. What a tricky word that can be, right? Remember that besides being a demonstrative pronoun, it can also be a relative pronoun. And here that is working as a demonstrative pronoun whose role is that of an adjective. It might seem complicated, but it's not. You just have to simply think about how is that word working in the sentence? What's its role? What's its function? Right? And it might, again, seem complicated at first, but you just have to give yourself that opportunity to think about the words individually. What are they doing in a sentence? Our next examples of adjectives: how many, 20 miles, 2 men, several apples. Right? That how many, we're thinking about numbers. Right? Numbers working as adjectives. How many miles? Well, there are 20 miles. Same with how much, right? We have words that try to give us quantity. No salt, some food. Let's take a look at our example sentences. The first one: this grammar book is exciting. This grammar book is exciting. I'm sure you've seen the adjectives in this sentence. You've probably identified, before I can, all 3 of them. Yes, there are 3 of them. Okay? So the noun being described, let's start there. The noun being described is book. Okay? So we want to think about the 3 words working to describe book. Let's start with exciting. What kind of book is it? It is an exciting book. Okay? But we can further talk about what kind of book it is. It's not just any book. It's not a novel. It's not a book of poetry, although we might wish it were a book of poetry. No, it's a grammar book, and an exciting one at that. Right? So 2 adjectives that help us to think about what kind. And then we have a 3rd adjective that tells us which one. Yes, it's the this. It's this grammar book that is exciting, not that other one over there, this one. Our second example: the older man dropped his wooden cane. Let's first identify the nouns being described. The sentence has 2 nouns. The first one, man. The second one, cane. So, older, right? It's giving us information about what kind, to use the category above, what kind of man do we have here is an older man. Which one? We can talk about articles in a little while. The, working a lot like those demonstrative pronouns. It's the older man, not just any man. The older man dropped his. There's that possessive pronoun again. Remember those possessive pronouns working like adjectives, right? Taking the place of this noun. So it's describing cane, right? Showing possession of cane. What kind of cane is it? It's not a steel cane, it's a wooden cane. So wooden is our other adjective. So articles, there are only 3 of them, only 3 that you have to remember. Just 3. There they are. A and an, those are our indefinite articles. And then our one and only definite article, the. So let's take a look at our 2 example sentences. Right, the first one, a car flew by the house. In that sentence, we have 2 articles. A, which of course is our indefinite article, and the, which is a definite article. A, indefinite, the, definite. And both, of course, are working like adjectives that describe nouns. House is a noun. Car is a noun. Our next sentence, I'm going to let you identify the articles, and hopefully this is an easy task. You'd be like, Mr. Zeverbergen, this is too easy. The chicken chased me across the yard. Just take a moment, identify the articles in that sentence. Okay, so hopefully it was, as I thought, a simple matter. The and the. And notice again, they're describing the nouns in our sentence. The chicken, the yard.